Steven Spielberg figure away.
All right, everybody, welcome to Triple Feature Podcast. This is our second episode. And today we're going to be talking about Cloverfield. That was Connor's spooky October pick. We're going to get into that later. So, if you missed last week, we basically kind of introduced ourselves. My name is Emma.
I'm Freddie.
And
I'm Seabear.
So you'll have to forgive us if there are any awkward pauses or if we,
We're still feeling it out.
We're not professional podcasters by any sense of the word. We're just three people that really like movies that talk to each other because we don't want to drive our significant others crazy. And we decided to also share that with you. If you cared to listen to Triple Feature Podcast, thank you for being here. But yeah, we're just kind of sharing our love for movies with the void, I guess. So every week we're going to start out with talking about what we recently watched and what's on our watch list. So, Connor, what have you watched in the last week since we last talked?
Quite a bit, but in a bit of just getting into the spooky vibes of October.
It's Spooktober.
It's Halloween's approaching. It's creeping. It's crawling. So you got to get all those movies in. So while I was doing errands around the house and stuff, I put on Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, one of the Hanna-Barbera TV, I think it's a TV movie. It's from 1988. It's just Scooby, Shaggy, and
yeah,
it's just a Scooby and Shaggy and Scrappy movie. None of the rest of the gang, but they go to a house that just basically has all the monsters. All the basically Universal monsters, but they're daughters, so it's a girls' school for monsters. So you have a wolf girl, an invisible woman, a Dracula type of girl, and they get into shenanigans. It's just a nonsensical
Scooby-Doo shenanigans.
And then after that, I watched Scary Godmother: Halloween Spooktacular, a Cartoon Network rerun classic on Cartoon Network. It is a movie that they got the rights to, I'm pretty much sure, and it just was always on every October.
Yeah, I've seen Scary Godmother a handful of times just from it being on TV.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I can't say I've seen that one.
I'm pretty sure it's based off of
a collective
book.
2000s.
Yeah.
Is it live action?
It's like a collective
or is it
memory.
Animated?
It's animated.
No, it's animated.
Cool. We are animation stands here at Triple Feature.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
was there more? Was there more? Or were those the big two?
It was just those for just doing errands. But the big one, the two big ones is I rewatched It and It Chapter 2.
Nice. I have seen those.
It 2017 is, every time I rewatch it, is just amazing. I love It Chapter 1. It is so good. It's everything that I love about a movie, just young adult content. I'm a sucker for that, the Goonies vibe and everything, and it's just it's so creative and so great. And then they decided to make It Chapter 2. And it just, in my opinion, falls apart. It's just so long, and it just takes so long to get to things, but then because it's so long, a lot of the scares just don't really matter at points, because you're just kind of bored after a while. And yeah, like I don't know, but I just feel like it chapter 1 has a special place in my heart because me and Freddie actually saw it in college. And what a crazy experience that was.
100%. Like, It Chapter 1 was like this really big like cultural moment, and like we didn't realize how big It Chapter 1 was going to be until we showed up to the movie theater, and it was literally out the door, and they were closing other movies. They were like turning off the other movies that were playing just to play it in every single theater in this movie theater.
I've never seen that happen because usually they're a little bit, they're planned out in advance.
Yeah.
I didn't see It Chapter 1 when it came out in theaters in 2017. It Chapter 1 was one of those movies that I went to go see in 2020 when there were absolutely no theaters open in Michigan until October. So me and another one of my friends spent many a nights at the Ford, Wyoming drive-in because that was the only theater that was allowed to play movies and have an audience. And I'm a theater like fiend. Like, get me into a movie theater with no lights, with like chairs and like popcorn, and like I'm in heaven. And so I guess I could, in during the pandemic, I settled for sitting in my car and watching movies. But there weren't any movies coming out, so they were just playing older releases. And so I watched it in 2020 and I screamed out loud in my car.
I don't think there's anything wrong with I think that's like a perfect opportunity though for like a drive-in theater to.
Oh my god!
Like,
they
drive-in
made
theaters
so much
barely
money.
like drive-in theaters barely are around anymore, and I think it's a really cool, different movie-going experience. So I think that was like kind of like a weird silver lining where it's like you might not be able to go to a theater, but you can go to what used to be like kind of like what you would expect to go to if you're going to go see a movie.
Oh, it was so much fun. I was very
Yeah.
grateful because I would just go every weekend because I just needed to see movies. And so they made so much money that summer. They made so much money. It was insane. Yeah.
Honestly, they probably needed
Same
it
with my hometown.
after.
Literally, I single-handedly kept Florida, Wyoming Drive-In.
You funded the theater.
So, yeah.
Same with my hometown with the McHenry Theater, the McHenry Outdoor Theater. They were pretty poppin' around the COVID times.
Right.
But yeah, no, with it's just like, yeah, that theater experience was crazy, like Freddie was saying. Like, they just shut everything down. And it's like the first time I've ever seen that too, because like when you're in the UP and it's just the one movie theater, they can pretty much make their own rules. So they're like, these college kids want to see this movie, like we're shutting everything down for the night.
Crazy.
Like, we're just only showing it.
Yeah,
like, it was so packed. Like, there were people like watching it in the hall, like going into the theater because they bought tickets. Like, it was insane.
It was truly insane. Like, never before seen and never since have seen that. It was just it.
I really don't remember it being such a craze.
And that was the thing. We were like interested in seeing it, and then I didn't think anything of it. Had a big guerrilla marketing campaign behind it, and I didn't realize how successful that was until we got to the theater, and it's like, oh man, like half of the town is here to see this movie right now.
That's nuts.
Yeah, like it was like to put in perspective too. Like, this was a bigger day than Avengers: Infinity War or even Endgame, and we went to those opening nights. Yeah. I think Infinity War was like pretty crazy, but like it was more crazy of like people not wanting, like people didn't want it spoiled for them because it's Infinity War. But like, it wasn't like out the door because pretty much everyone already bought their tickets in advance. Whereas like with it was like everyone was getting there. It's like no one pre-ordered their tickets for it. So it was just, it was just crazy. It was just pandemonium.
Mm-hmm. I think there were probably people that
God bless that
them,
Thomas Theater.
It was, and it's like a 10 theater movie theater, and they shut down they had planned 2 or 3 theaters to show it off the bat. They shut down like 6 other theaters to show that movie.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I think I said like after our screening, like I felt, because I think there was like a family that came up to like go see like whatever kids movie that was there, and they had to like tell these kids like, yeah, no, we're not showing that tonight.
Sorry, kid.
Yeah,
No.
unless you want to see the scary clown movie, like
Yeah.
get out of here.
But yeah, it chapter 2 just definitely did not have the follow up to the first one, and it was right in that like sort of Stranger Things peaking.
Yeah, they were trying to lean into
So-
the Goonies, Stranger Things kind of thing, but they also tried to get this really amazing adult cast to be like the child counterparts, and that's what drew me to it, was because I'm a huge Jessica Chastain fan, and I love Bill Hader.
Bill
There's a
Hader's
couple
amazing.
Other people, I mean, obviously like James McAvoy, but like, yeah, I was interested in part 2 probably more because I knew those actors, and the story just was so lame. So
Yeah.
From what I've heard,
connect to that.
From what I've heard from people that read the book, the adult stuff is the more boring stuff. And I've always pitched that, like, yeah, chapter 1 should have ended with them killing the clown. There shouldn't have been a part 2.
Right.
And people are like, but then you don't get the adult stuff. And I'm like, well, if the adult stuff is boring,
Yeah.
then, like, cut it. But I do feel like they had to do it because, like, Stephen King would have got mad, like, when he, like he did with
100%.
Kubrick.
Yeah. Stephen King was
Like-
not a big fan of people changing up his story all that much.
Yeah. So I understand, like, from a studio and like author perspective of like why they did like the part 2, which also like was in the theater reaction to when chapter 1 like ended and it said chapter 1, like people flipped out. Like that was the most I've seen people flipped out at like an end stinger. Because everyone was like, what? No way! Like they're making a second one? Like, because they never greenlit like them doing a second one. And I remember we were with someone that read the book and she was like, yeah, like halfway through I'm like, they're not even doing the adult stuff. Like when are they gonna get the adult stuff in here? And so yeah, like it's just, but I don't know, part 2's meh, but part 1, it's an annual rewatch for me at this point. It's so good.
Yeah. They're gazebos.
Oh yeah. Other than that, I watched I gave a rewatch showing Tasha for the first time, Evil Dead 2013.
Okay.
What a banger of a movie. This movie understands what it needs to be a remake. And I think it also doesn't help that I watched it, then Evil Dead 2013, and then It Chapter 2, because with It Chapter 2, it has a lot of CG, like very CG elements. And there's like some like practical effects in the movie, and when the practical effects do happen, I'm like, oh my god, like those are so great. And with Evil Dead 2013, there's obviously like CG and heavy like VFX, but there's also like a lot of like practical special effects because they're homaging like the original Evil Dead. And when those hit in that movie, like it is gnarly. Like it is such a gnarly, bloody good time. It is
Bloody good
so
time.
good. Oh, it is what up there with my favorite like horror movies now.
Freddie, have you seen the Evil Dead franchise?
I haven't seen all of them. I've seen, but I have seen Evil Dead 2013. I'm about to admit to a cinema sin. I actually haven't seen the original Evil Dead. I've seen Evil Dead 2013 and Evil Dead Rise.
Well, that's
which was
I have a bigger cinema sin, which is I have not seen any of the Evil Dead movies at all. So,
Yeah.
But I'm also
I've seen
just
them all.
not a. That's just you know.
You're not like a big
Connor,
horror
you're
person.
averse to mob movies. I'm averse to blood and guts. So,
Yeah.
I'm not into
Yeah,
Saw,
and
and
yeah.
I'm not into Evil Dead. So,
Well,
I
will
will
say-
probably watch Evil Dead. Maybe the original with
I would,
but I
me
don't
personally,
think
I would
get
say maybe
interested in the
watch
others.
2.
Oh,
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Evil-
Everybody loves Evil Dead too. Everybody
Yeah.
loves it.
Well, it's because Evil Dead 2 was a remake of Evil Dead.
Yeah, that's right. That's
The
right.
original.
No, yeah, I've heard all of these things before. Listening
Yeah.
to podcasts, people. Last year
That's a lie.
when what's it called? Yeah, the Doctor Strange movie came out last May, and it was a Sam Raimi film, and people were like going back through his filmography, and I was listening to people talk about that, and so. I mean
the original Evil Dead is definitely holds like its place
no,
in
I think
film.
I should just watch Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's a super low budget movie that managed to just
It's like Clerks.
rake in. Like it just had such a gigantic audience appeal.
Well, horror in general is always going to have a
yeah.
massive audience.
But
let us know,
it's just more of a
listeners,
test.
Should I dedicate any time to the Evil Dead franchise? Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. What else have you seen, Seabear?
Other than that, I watched No One Will Save You because of its heavy marketing campaign that targeted me. And then potentially what Emma said last episode. Just kind of swayed
part
me
of the
into
marketing
watching
campaign?
it. Pretty much. It's getting a lot of praise, and a lot of people on Letterboxd that I follow were praising it, and I'm like, I should probably give this a watch. And yeah, it's a good thriller. It's really good. Like this is probably one of the best alien movies since Signs.
Yeah,
probably,
I was
going to
say it's like Signs for well, I mean, yeah, it has a lot of similarities to Signs.
Yeah. I think my biggest issue, and it's not with the film, it's just with the distributor, is that like it just sucks that Disney bought 20th Century Fox and is just putting a lot of these like 20th Century Fox movies to streaming when some of these would absolutely make money. And the first example was Prey.
Yeah.
Like last year.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
it? Mm-hmm. And then now with this movie. And it's just like I understand like why they didn't put this to theaters, because they were afraid like a no dialogue movie would make money. But like the word of mouth is so big right now that I'm like, oh my god, like this would have been the surprise hit of the summer, maybe.
Yeah.
Like if they released it in the summer, or if they released it now, like what they did like now, like this would have been the October movie to go see.
Yeah.
But like it's just crazy.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with Prey. I mean, it was a word of mouth hit, and it would have been a banger in theaters. I think people really would
with
have
Prey,
liked to see
it was a word of mouth hit because of the fact of like it's the first time in a long time, and for most fans since the original, we got a good Predator movie.
Yeah, it was a very good Predator movie.
That's why I got like so much good word of mouth. Is like finally they did it. like
Yeah,
let's go.
Prey's a great movie. I really enjoyed Prey.
It's got that.
But yeah,
that indigenous representation too.
Yeah,
Really cool movie.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, with the res dog too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, cool.
Other than that, I've the last couple of things I watched 2 short films on the Criterion Channel, the horror shorts. I watched Hairwolf and The Beaning. Hairwolf is almost like a Jordan Peele. The best way I could describe it is like a Jordan Peele style type of comedy horror, where it's about this black girl that gets approached by a white woman that wants braids and basically like imposing like white culture into black people.
Oh, nice.
So using the werewolf in the way of like the white man was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then The Beaning is just a short quote unquote documentary, almost like a satanic conspiracy like documentary about this baseball player from the Yankees that beamed this Cleveland player, and like how like maybe that's a coincidence of like they had like some satanic like rituals or whatever and things, and that's what makes the Yankees keep winning World Series and stuff. It's a weird short film,
man.
but
That's fun.
That sounds
I would highly
interesting,
recommend
though.
it.
I
Yeah.
would say I retract my earlier statement of I'm not really a horror film person, because there's one kind of horror that I will I Will Be Seated, and that is Jordan Peele horror. That's my guy right there. He knows what he's doing. He's also just kind of like doing Spielberg horror in the 21st century, and he's doing it
pretty well.
Pretty well. Yeah. I was gonna say better, and then I was like, well, yeah, we can have that discussion at some point.
And then lastly, I watched The Wolfman, 2010. Joe Johnston, director of Jumanji and Jurassic Park 3. I'm a huge Jurassic Park 3 stan. I love that movie.
It's not terrible. It's not the worst. It's not worse than Jurassic Park.
It's not the worst Jurassic Park, yeah. but the Wolfman is pretty good. It's a good like rated R Universal monster movie. And hindsight 2020, it's like I'd rather take that movie than what Universal ended up doing later down the road, which is just action like movies with their Universal monsters. And it's just like, yeah, give me more like gothic horror, like just rated R, cool VFX and stuff. Benicio del Toro plays the Wolfman. Emily Blunt is like the love interest, and Anthony Hopkins, man, he plays the dad of Benicio del Toro. He is hamming it up in that movie.
Wow.
You thought he couldn't get any either worse or better than in Thor? Man, the Wolfman, it's like, it's a performance.
I've never seen this or heard of this. I'm looking it up.
Yeah, it made no money. It flopped in the box office, and it just was another failed attempt from Universal to bring back its Universal monsters. But I don't know. Like it's cool. It's fun. Like I gave it an average rating, but like I still had fun with it. I think like every once in a while I might rewatch it here and there, but it was good.
Alrighty.
That's what I watched this week.
Okay. So for me, I have a couple. So as far as horror goes, I watched Jigoku, which is a Japanese horror movie from 1960. It means hell, and essentially it's just about this man that is basically involved in a hit and run that kills this gangster. So like he's riding passenger in the car with his friend, they hit this guy and they drive off and he dies. So then like this guilt is following him around, and the real like it's very it uses a lot of cuts with no like abrupt cuts between real and surreal I guess like storytelling. So like he's going through something, but then like it'll just hard cut to like almost like a dream sequence of him just like processing his guilt associated with that. And he ends up going home to visit his mom who's dying, and like things just start unraveling for him. And then the big sort of centerpiece of the movie is at the end, he goes to hell, and he's basically like guided through all the circles of hell. It's pretty intense for a movie from 1960. It's pretty gory. They got like people getting sawed in half.
Dang.
They got people getting their hands cut off and like their tongues cut out. It's intense, but you can see the influence that film has on contemporary horror movies like throughout. Just even so, for example, there's one shot that is used constantly, and the most prevalent example that the two of you will be familiar with is the shot at the beginning of Midsommar when they're driving that car through
it's like the upside down,
and it pans upside down.
Yeah.
This is the movie that it comes from.
Oh, fun.
So there's a scene where he's told to meet with this person on a bridge. He doesn't know who it is. He gets like this mysterious note, and he's walking up to the bridge, and then he pans under the camera tilts, as he walks underneath it, and when he walks onto the bridge, it's upside down. And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, there it is. That's the thing. It's like they do it in Midsommar, they do it in The Conjuring.
Yeah. I've seen it in a lot of horror films too. It's a really good technique. It makes you really disoriented and feel very eerie. You add some light piano, creepy music there.
And it's definitely utilized at one of the biggest turning points in the story, where it's like this is quite literally where everything goes upside down. to be on the nose with it.
Exactly.
But it was really good. I enjoyed it. And that was my most recent horror movie that I watched. Other than that, I've been on my Agnes Varda kick, because that is...
Agnes.
I love Agnes Varda. She is, by far, my favorite director.
She's the man.
She's the man.
She's the woman.
She's the woman. She's the queen.
Sorry.
She's the queen, period. This is why she's the GOAT. The GOAT.
The GOAT!
She's also the cutest goat.
Oh, I know.
She's
her
the
haircut.
sweetest, cutest goat.
So I've been on my Agnes Varda kick, and what I've decided is, because I've seen half of her movies, but now that I have a renewed subscription to the Criterion channel, I'm going to watch...
Shout out Criterion channel.
Oh, yes. Because they have all of her movies. I'm going to watch all of them and then reward myself by buying the box set of all of them from Criterion. That's the plan.
Okay.
So I've been watching... I was watching some of her short films. I'm going to pronounce these atrociously. So they're all... because they're in French. So you'll have to bear with me as I butcher the names of these movies. Sorry, Agnes. Rest in peace.
What, you tell me you don't speak
R.I.P.
French?
Agnes.
Yeah. So I watched L'Opera Mauve. It's a movie that she made when she was pregnant, and it's kind of like a reflection of her feelings of, how she feels transitioning into this stage of her life, like becoming a parent, and just sort of what she sees in the world around her. It's fantastic. Everything she does is just fantastic. I watched that. I watched Uncle Yanko, which is a very popular short film of hers. I would argue it's probably her most popular. She was in San Diego, I believe, for a film festival, and she found out that there was an artist that also had the last name Varda, and she found out that it was her relative, that they just weren't aware of each other. So she made a documentary going and meeting her uncle, and he's this artist that lives in sort of this village of homemade houseboats with all of these other local artists, and he's a painter. It's fantastic. Wow. I watched Response des Femmes, which was a short that she made for French television of women talking about, they're being asked questions about, what is a woman. It's short. It's only 9 minutes long, and it's a feminist, just powerhouse little short film.
Love it.
Very impactful,
I'm here for women
good.
Empowerment.
I feel like every one of these movies I'm just going to say very good, but that's just because it's Agnes Varda, and I cannot get enough of this woman's work. And then I watched, outside of the short films, I did rewatch The Gleaners and I, which was the movie that I was introduced to Agnes Varda with. It was the documentary that she made. It's kind of one of the... It was the first digital movie that she had made. It's filmed entirely on a handheld mini DV camera. It's her talking about and meeting and interviewing the gleaners around France, which are all of the people that go and take the leftover food that isn't harvested. But it becomes more than that. But that's sort of like the basis of it is, all the food is harvested. The rest of this is just waste. It's going to be thrown out. So then it's local people, people that either are underprivileged, and this is one of the only ways that they're getting the food that they need. It's people that are concerned economically about the amount of food waste because it's tons of food. They come there and collect it as well. But Agnes Varda has this way of telling stories and documentaries that is so intimate and just so earnest that it's unlike anything else. So it's more than just a matter-of-fact statement of these are these people, this is what they do. It's these are these people, and this is how I feel meeting these people, and this is how it's changed me, and this is how it's helped me understand myself as a person. It's unmatched. And it's so, everything feels so simple, but it's done with such intent. It's masterful. It's masterful.
All right.
That's why she's the GOAT.
That's why she is the GOAT. I won't keep wandering on too long about this, but believe me, I'll talk about Agnes Varda more over the course of this podcast.
Okay, so the rest of the year, Freddie's going to be watching Agnes Varda films on his Criterion collection.
Oh, yes.
So we'll be hearing more from Freddie about that.
Does that have Faces Places?
It actually doesn't. That's the one movie it doesn't have.
Wow.
That's the one movie I've only seen.
You got to see some of her other ones. It's like 60 years of work. She's a monumental director.
Yeah.
She is underrated in the French New Wave, but she is the French New Wave. Like, her work and the work of her contemporaries shape the way that films are created to this day.
Yay.
Yeah, Faces Places is so good.
Yes.
Like, yeah. I need to see more.
I need to see more too.
Hop on that Criterion channel.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay. I'm going to be talking about some films that I've watched.
Yeah, what have you been watching?
Week. I didn't get to any rewatches or first watches this week because there was just too many new releases that I had to catch before I couldn't catch them. So, last week I talked about Wes Anderson's short films that he released on Netflix last week on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So the first one was The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, which I talked about last week. So I'll move on to his 3 shorter films. Started with The Swan on Thursday, The Ratcatcher on Friday, and Poison on Saturday. And of those 3, I would say, I think The Swan is probably my favorite. I would say The Ratcatcher fits more with his tone of like his of most of his features. So does Henry Sugar, I think, fits the tone. But I want to talk about The Swan and Poison. Those 2 are completely different than Wes Anderson's tone. It is they both have a whimsical vibe to them, but the events that take place are incredibly dark. And I think it was pretty interesting that Wes Anderson kind of went that route. They're based on short stories written by Roald Dahl, and as a English teacher, as somebody who's been an English teacher, I definitely was like thinking about how cool it would be to like use these short films as like supplements for reading those texts. because they're just basically what they do is the actors are reciting the short story word for word while kind of acting it out. And so like there's a character who's like also a narrator, and so it's a very cool little, if you've never read those stories, like, but I have never read The Swan or Poison, and they were incredibly dark, and they dealt with very adult themes. And anyway, I suggest you check them out. They're on Netflix. They're very short. They're like 15, 17 minutes long. Shorter than, a TV show episode or, whatever else you might be watching. Did you want to say something, Freddie?
I was just, that sounds very interesting.
It is very,
that's all. I definitely want to check those out, because I like the idea of them acting it and like reciting this story at the same time.
Yeah, it was incredible. And they kind of did that with Henry Sugar too. So it's like very quick. Like they're basically reading, and it's just like, but they're looking at the camera. And anyway, very, very cool. I mean, he has some of the best like English actors doing this, because Roald Dahl is an Englishman, and they have Dev Patel and Ben Kingsley and Benedict Cumberbatch and Rupert Fiend. I think that's his name. Anyway, there's a lot of things going on. Ray Fiennes is playing both Roald Dahl, so like he'll cut to like Roald Dahl kind of like talking to the audience like as an author and not a narrator, and so he's playing him, but he's also playing the rat catcher, and he's literally like, he's made to look like a rat, and Ray Fiennes is doing like some of the funniest, gaggiest, and that's the one that like has a very like silly kind of like tone to it. But anyway,
do you think that, like, because my thought about these shorts going on to Netflix, like, do you think that this could have been a movie in a way of like The French Dispatch?
Yeah, I was just about to say,
he
like,
tried.
If it would have been a movie, it would have been like The French Dispatch, and I loved The French Dispatch. I loved that they had those three, short stories kind of like put into almost like a editorial newspaper kind of thing. I think this is a lot different. I don't think that, because they are four very distinct stories. I do think like, because I really kind of liked it, honestly. Like, if Wes Anderson released a short film on Netflix every day, I would watch it. So
yeah, but like what the contract out, Wes.
So,
but what I was getting at was just like it feels like it could have been something like an anthology like movie, type of like a throwback to that in a way. But
could have, but he's done that.
Are they all out?
He wanted to try something. They're all out, and they're all still there. Okay. So go watch them, y'all. Like, they're really good.
So how many is it total? Is it five? Four? Okay.
4. There's 4, and the Henry Sugar one is the longest one. That's like 37.
But they
minutes.
do Netflix. Okay. Netflix does have the Batilda musical also on there in their collection, because I saw they have a Roald Dahl collection.
Yeah.
So if you want to continue down that rabbit hole,
I don't know if I want to do the Roald Dahl rabbit hole, but But yeah, I was interested in Wes Anderson. That's for dang sure. Okay. So another new release that I saw since we last recorded, I went to see the new Gareth Edwards film, The Creator, which is an original sci-fi epic, and something very significant. Well, I think it's significant in the fact that it's an original sci-fi. It's not based on another text. It's not based on any, it's not a sequel to anything. It is an original story. Another thing that's very special about this film is the way that it was filmed. It was essentially like filmed on this, I don't really know the name of the camera. Freddie would probably know the name of the camera because Freddie's the camera guy.
Yeah, it's very nerdy.
It is very nerdy, and it's basically like a $3,000 like handheld camera, and I read an article from the director's perspective, kind of talking about like, why do we have these like bulky, massive cameras that we can't really move around, when technology kind of has afforded us the ability to make really gorgeous images with something that we can hold in our hands and move around with. And so I would say the cinematography is a huge talking point for this film because it's gorgeous. It just looks really beautiful. I would say the CGI is really good as well. It looks real. It looks like it was filmed in a real location, and I really appreciate when people do that instead of trying to, put everything in a green screen room. And other than that, I don't think there's anything else that's super special about this movie. It has a script that's basically like AI versus humans, but like it's very sympathetic towards AI. And I think Ridley Scott has done this with Blade Runner, and Steven Spielberg has done this with AI, and
Stanley Kubrick and Spielberg.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick, but also like Westworld was a 4-season show that basically did this, and so I think it's
movie.
Yeah, I think it's just
the
kind
Westworld
of like
movie. What I meant,
like a tired kind of thing, and I think you can do those things, but you have to add something new. You have to like add new layers. And I don't necessarily think that happened here with the creator. So I give it its props. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's very unique. But I also just it didn't do anything for me. So that was the creator.
I'm just glad. Yeah, I'm just glad that movie's getting a lot of praise because of being like an original like sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
And also the budget was 80.
Yeah, and they're going to
80
make
million.
money. Yeah, they're going to make money.
Well,
something like Indiana Jones cost like $300 million to make, and it looks like shit.
Exactly.
And
that's the conversation that people are talking about.
You can make a movie for under $100 million and make it
look
good.
Amazing.
So I did look at I did look it up. They shot it on a Sony FX3, which is like very much a prosumer cinema camera.
But what Gareth Edwards talks about,
it's so cool.
Yeah.
I love
what Gareth
that.
Edwards talks about is the lenses that he uses, Freddy, and stuff.
Ooh,
and like all that
I'm
things.
all
Because
about
he did talk about how he has a specific lens that uses, like, if you go to the Screen X theaters, the ones that fill up the whole like width of the theater room, that's how you can actually see the true width that he actually filmed certain scenes on. And I'm like, dude, this dude,
it's
like he basically
anamorphic lens.
So I really think
he basically filmed at like the Quentin Tarantino movie, the Hateful Eight.
I really think that this director, Gareth Edwards, has an eye. He just needs a good story, and I'm not giving up on him yet. I just I think this was something that if he makes a lot of money with this movie, which I think he will because the budget was so low, that I think that people are gonna continue. Studios are gonna give him more chances, and so let me move on. So Dumb Money is another movie I saw this past weekend. It is about the GameStop stock market crap that happened like in 2021. It's kind of like amazing how fast this movie was able to be written and released like 2 years after this event. And I remember this event happening, and I was very interested in it. So, I mean, it's enjoyable. Paul Dano plays the main character, but there's a lot of cast in this movie that does a great job. America Ferrera's in it. Pete Davidson's also in it, and I mean, there's a lot going on, and so it's one of those biopics movies that like I think it tells a story to people. I think the purpose is to kind of like, here's this story. Maybe you don't know what happened 2 years ago, like it's like for those kind of people that like weren't sentient. I guess.
I've heard it's like,
what were you doing? Like, if you didn't know that was happening, like, what were you doing? So, like,
I've heard it's Adam McKay, like, like diet like Adam McKay?
It's diet David Fincher. It's diet Social Network.
Oh.
Like they're trying to do the Social Network.
Oh.
And you can kind of tell
Now
like,
I'm
with
more
the score,
intrigued.
they're trying to do like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross with the score. And
Okay.
and it's really just kind of, it's okay, you know. It's nothing. It didn't blow me away either.
What would you say
It's like a rental.
What would you say the
theme?
the lens that it's viewed at through? Is
So-
it viewed at as like the people doing it are
How political do you want me to get on this podcast?
Well, okay, so the reason I bring it
Because
up,
I can get pretty political if you want me to.
yeah, I mean,
That's
honestly,
honestly, my
but,
political leanings are a reason why this movie didn't do anything for me.
yeah,
I wouldn't say that it's leaning heavily into hyper-capitalism, but it's leaning into, like, petite bourgeoisie capitalism. Like, it's like we're going to fight capitalism with small capitalism.
okay,
And that was kind of my critique with this story.
I do want to see this movie for the reason that there's a YouTube channel that I really enjoy, Folding Ideas, and it's funny because this movie came out, and I think on almost the exact same day, he put out like an over 2 hour long video, also talking about this GameStop thing. And like when he puts these videos out, it is like thoroughly researched. So he like breaks this down from like the get-go to the end of it. So I'm kind of interested to see like
That's the
how
Suicide
this
Squad
story
guy, right?
is presented in the movie. It is a Suicide Squad guy. He also did a video about NFTs that like blew up. But
Yeah, this guy's good.
yeah. So, and that was like sort of his take, is like it's kind of just a bunch of people like they like, it's like they're saying a lot and trying to make it sound like they're doing something that's like really good, but also it's like you're also just screwing over a lot of people the same way that you think you're screwing over the people that it's like you think you're screwing over people, but you're also just handing a hot potato off to the people that you've duped into also buying into this.
I'm going to read you a Letterboxd review that I really liked. That really kind of summed it up for me. And I have to find it. But essentially, it kind of just goes with what you were saying of like, I feel like, they're really trying to like, here it is. We sure showed those rich people for like 2 weeks that one time. Like that's kind of like how I feel about this movie, is just like, okay, but you really didn't do anything. You really did something for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I walked away feeling like underwhelmed. I was just like, that really didn't do anything for me. So, and that leads me to the other new release I watched this week, which is Flora and Son. It is a John Carney movie. Are any of you familiar with John Carney?
No.
No,
You've seen
and
the
I
movie.
haven't heard what this movie that you're talking
You've
about
seen
either.
the movie once, I'm assuming.
The movie once? I don't think so.
Oh God.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Am I talking to people who've never seen Once before? You never even heard of Once?
John Carney?
Oh my God. Have you heard of Begin Again or Sing Street?
I've heard of Sing Street, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Sing Street. Yeah.
Okay, so Sing Street is his third film. He first did Once and Begin Again, and then he did Sing Street. And so basically the common thread between all four of these films is the use of music in his films. And Once is my favorite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just IMDb'd the guy. That's why I'm like, oh, nice. Yeah, Being Again, I think I saw. That's the Mark
Begin
Ruffalo
Again.
movie.
Mark Ruffalo, Keira Knightley, and Adam Levine.
Once, yeah.
Adam Levine.
So yeah, so
once
he kinda...
I have not seen.
Okay, well, you gotta watch Once, because if you like Sing Street, you're gonna like.
But I loved
Once
Sing Street
way more, because that's my opinion anyway. Once is a perfect film. I actually watched it in my cinema class in college. Anyway, so Flora and Son is a film that came out on Apple TV Plus. It went straight to Apple TV Plus. I think it was in theaters for maybe like a week. But yeah, I was interested in it specifically because it's a John Carney film. And yeah, it's about this Irish woman who's a single mom. And she just is struggling with her teenage son. And she starts learning the guitar. And they start kind of like making music together, her and her son. And anyway, it's really heartwarming. And like, it's like a warm blanket. You know, it's a comfort film. But again, it's a little cheesy. So, you know, I would give it like a 7 out of 10 in terms of like ratings. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you liked Sing Street, I would recommend it. And you have to see once. I don't know what y'all have been doing for the last however many years that's been out. Came out in 2007.
I don't know. It took me a while to see Sing Street.
2007.
Apparently not the right thing, because I haven't seen it once.
Yeah.
Once.
Not once.
No, you know. Anyway, okay, so that is my recently watched. So, yeah, we're going to move on now.
Yeah.
To our first pick
Tots.
of
Topic of the show.
Spooky October or Spooktober. Last week,
Boom.
Seabear picked Cloverfield from 2008. So I hope, if you're listening, that you've had a chance to watch Cloverfield before this discussion, because we are not going to hold back. We are going to spoil the entire film, and that's kind of your fault if you haven't seen this movie. So, Seabear, you picked this movie. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, Cloverfield, 2008, directed by Matt Reeves. Director now of the Batman fame and the latter half of the Planet of the Apes movies, but a big collaborator with J.J. Abrams. Before Cloverfield, he did Felicity with J.J., and just a huge collaborator. But yeah, Cloverfield is a big kaiju monster movie. It's basically spawned off of J.J. Abrams doing the press tour for Mission Impossible 3, went into toy shops around Tokyo and always kept seeing Godzilla toys and thought, why can't America have their own monster like that, an icon? And they pitched it to Paramount, and that's what greenlit Cloverfield. It is a fantastic film, in my opinion. Found footage movie. It is shot entirely on we're presumed a digital camera by T.J. Miller in the movie,
or if a millennial might use the terms camcorder.
Yeah, I was going to say specifically a DV camera.
Yeah,
just because that's going to come into place in our discussion.
The fun, yeah, but yeah, it takes place all over that, and I don't know what more to keep going over the plot, but the plot of just it's people celebrating a friend / brother going away to Japan on a business. He got upgraded, in life, business and work. So they're doing a throwaway, party. But while the party's going on, something happens in New York. And they go walk outside, and they just happen to see the Statue of Liberty head in their street, and events fold from there. But yeah, it's just I don't know, like it's just such a good vibe. It's just a good movie, and it just I think my biggest takeaway from the movie is that it just sucks that J.J. Abrams wanted this to become an icon, and it hasn't.
Do you not think it has become an icon?
I don't think that.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it's had this staying power. Because here's the thing,
it's Godzilla.
If somebody were to say what's the Cloverfield monster look like? I think most people that have seen Cloverfield aren't going to be able to tell you that's what it looks like. But Cloverfield as a franchise has had staying power, but it's like a universe franchise, not specifically this monster that was in New York City in this 2008 movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure. So you're thinking like, I mean, because if I think about Cloverfield as a movie, I think the movie has become an icon. But I don't necessarily think the monster has become an icon.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah,
I don't necessarily
I mean.
think that is a bad thing. Unless J.J. Abrams just wanted to sell a bunch of toys.
Yeah, but I do
No,
think...
it's just...
Yeah, I think
it's just kind of like... I agree with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just kind of agree with him that, like, the only thing that America has with, like, big monsters is King Kong. And we barely use King Kong as well. And so it just would have been cool to have this, like, cool original monster that we could, you know, see more and more and try to make more, like, monster movies like that. And just really the only big movies that we got, like, since Cloverfield that are big monster movies is Pacific Rim. And then the rights that Toho gave to us for Godzilla. And that's just us doing Godzilla. So it's just like, it's just crazy that, like, we haven't had anything more.
Well, I think Americans are more obsessed with heroes than they are with monsters.
Yeah.
And the toys that we're selling are, you know, Superman and, you know, Black Widow.
Yeah.
We're not really like as obsessed with like our monsters.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a good point, I guess. But I mean,
I'm just yeah.
Yeah. As a movie franchise, though, I mean, they've gone on to make a couple of pretty good, I guess, universe movies. Like, I guess not sequels, but like Cloverfield universe movies. You know.
No, I haven't seen. I haven't seen the Cloverfield Paradox, but 10 Cloverfield Lane is a banger.
Yeah, I have not seen Cloverfield Paradox, but yeah.
Here's the thing about if we're going to talk about these sequels, or the franchise as a whole, we have to talk about J.J. Abrams' whole mystery box theory, because like the problem that I have struggling with the franchise is that what J.J. Abrams has done with the franchise is that he basically, because the thing with 10 Cloverfield Lane that makes 10 Cloverfield Lane good is that it was a spec script that wasn't intended to be a Cloverfield movie. And then at the end, he just made, I forget his name, Dan, basically tag on, well, what if this was in the Cloverfield universe? And then that's what happened. And it's the same thing with Cloverfield Paradox. Each movies aren't necessarily sequels because they weren't intended to be sequels. They just happen to be like last moment, oh, let's just tie this together. But when they do tie it together, it leaves more with JJ's mystery box theory of like wanting more of the mystery, leaving you with questions than answers. And when that happens, and especially with these movies being so far apart, with 10 Cloverfield Lane being, I think that was 2017. So from 2008 to 2017, we finally get a sequel. It's kind of like, oh, like, what are we doing here? Like, we'd want more answers versus more questions in this franchise.
Yeah, I kind of like the mystery to it. It leaves more to be desired because, you know, when you go to see 10 Cloverfield Lane, however long after, you know, 8 years, I don't know how long it was, 2016, then you're thinking that you're gonna get a direct sequel, and you get like a little snack, you know, and it's not it's completely different, and I like that aspect of the franchise. It's something different than what other franchises try to do, you know, like our It conversation, like
they're not sequels, they're movies that are connected by a universe, but they are entirely meant to be standalone pieces. They aren't meant to be like supplementary to each other in like any major way, other than like people that want to really like deep dive into lore about like a franchise. You can do that with Cloverfield if you want to.
Yeah. And it's not to say that I don't like 10 Cloverfield Lane. I really do like 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's just my issue became when it became the Cloverfield paradox because of the fact of, like, it was just a bad spec script. And it's just like, oh, well, maybe we could save this with adding Cloverfield. And it's like, now I'm starting to see through the pages. Starting to see through the lines here. It's not a good sci-fi movie. And then when they add the Cloverfield stuff, it's like, okay, I guess this works.
Like, I guess I'm here for
but with 10 Cloverfield Lane, it just kind of like you had a really good movie and then they throw in the Cloverfield stuff and you're like, okay, like I like that.
Yeah.
Now, why don't we get a little bit back on topic with specifically Cloverfield?
Do we want to do like a little round table kind of like...
Yeah, we can do that. Like everybody goes around and shares a point.
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to start with you, Connor, since it's your pick.
Yeah.
How do you want to get that started?
I can talk about like the biggest takeaway that I get from, especially now watching it, but before when I watched it as like a kid, is the 9/11 themes that happened throughout this movie. Especially like watching. I think it was like a couple years ago I watched that documentary that these two brothers did about firefighters in New York, and then they just happened to be filming on 9/11, and then the documentary just ends up going into them documenting 9/11 as a whole, and seeing that documentary and then now watching Cloverfield in that light, it's just like, oh my god, like the images and the visuals, you can't really escape that like documentation that like we've had since like the tragedy that was 9/11.
The smoke, the people kind of walking around like
not even
they're
knowing.
In a daze.
Yeah.
Just covered in debris, and it's
screaming.
It's images that we kind of like we watched on television and we've kind of like grown up revisiting every year, and it's really hard to ignore the similarities there. So
it's also directly referenced like multiple times. Like if you like,
in the movie,
there's background characters like right at the beginning of the movie that are like, "Is this another terrorist attack?
Yeah.
Like, are we at war?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, it's not. It's like that's obviously like a really heavy like subtextual theme, but and they're not afraid to like. It's like this is supposed to be like our universe, and this is like a post 9/11 America.
It's a 21st century, 2000s. I mean, in the 2000s, like the 9/11 attacks were still so fresh. So like anything that's coming out in that time is going to have some sort of attachment to those anxieties. And I mean, I think the biggest, like if you see Lady Liberty's decapitated head, and that's basic, besides like the first tremor, like that's basically like the first event. And like if that's not a clue as to like what this movie is about, about like what 9/11 basically did to this country and did to Americans specifically, like that's your biggest, like it is flashing neon lights, like this is what this is about.
It's the zeitgeist.
And honestly, like when I went to see this in theaters in 2008, I was 17 years old and I had no clue. But watching it now, it is blatantly obvious what they're doing.
I feel the same way.
So,
like I watched this movie multiple times when I was a kid, and just like it didn't register with me. And now
did you see it in theaters, Freddie?
No, I didn't. I saw it on DVD, but I was immediately obsessed with it. Like I watched it repeatedly.
I think I'm a little older than y'all, because in 2008 that was my senior year of high school, and we went to theaters, and and man, that was something that people were talking about. Like that was something that like. It wasn't like, it was not even on social media, but like people like fellow students, my peers were talking about Cloverfield. Like everybody went to go see that movie, and everybody was quoting things. As I was rewatching this, I was like, a lot of the things that T.J. Miller says, I remember like quoting when I was in school because other people.
Oh yeah, like they had a really good marketing.
Yeah.
Like I
They did
remember
a
the
ARG.
teaser trailer.
Yeah.
I remember the teaser trailer that dropped before Transformers, because I saw Transformers in theaters, and the trailer was just like some footage and then the Statue of Liberty, like an explosion and then the Statue of Liberty head, landing, and there was no like it didn't say Cloverfield or anything. I think it just said a date.
Yeah.
And that alone was just like so interesting. And then
Yeah.
like I was reading up, like they had so much good like marketing of like they even like made fake MySpace accounts for all the characters, and their last
MySpace.
Yeah, no, they had an entire
Their
internet
last
campaign.
It's amazing.
Their last
That's so
update was the
2008.
release of the movie. And so I was like, that's awesome. But yeah, like it like I didn't see it in theaters as well because I don't think I was brave enough to go see it because I thought it was a horror movie. Because as a kid I didn't like horror movies like I do today, but yeah, I was like Freddy. I saw it later, and probably friends of mine showed me it. But yeah, I watched it a lot on DVD as a kid, and immediately fell in love.
Yeah.
But just to like, I guess, emphasize real quick, they did genuinely do like a very large internet campaign around like the mystery of the movie. So there was like websites set up with like hidden messages to try to get people to like interact with this, to try to learn more about this movie before it came out. So there was a big like that was like the marketing.
Yeah, this was a
campaign for
secret.
Cloverfield before it
This was
came
a
out.
secret movie. Like they didn't even give the scripts to the actors. What they gave the actors to audition for the movie was just old Felicity and like lost like scripts. Like it was so secretive of like what they were doing. Like this was like a huge like basically like drop, like shadow drop of like a movie like that Hollywood could do at the time. And it was crazy like how effective it was.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, do we want to speak any more about, like, the 9/11 messaging, or is that kind of... Do we want to move on to another point?
We can. I mean, I do think that that kind of ties in, that whole theme ties in with, like, the Godzilla inspiration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I do think is very...
I guess
is like very important. Like,
yeah, is the Godzilla messaging, was that like post World War II? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Yeah.
I mean, that adds up. That
Yeah.
checks out.
God's
big scary,
the
like unfathomable creature that destroys
An
Tokyo
entire
City.
Yeah.
So
that's
like
based
that's,
off of radiation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, like,
Message
that's-
received.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so to have something like Clover is what the VFX people call the monster. To have like Clover be like a response to 9/11, like a terrorist attack and something where like as we see these characters go, and the more that we see the movie, like especially when like the coolest creature design of when it releases the babies, like the baby insects,
the little baby
and like
clovers.
it's
Baby Clover.
like you like it's just like you don't like. You like we don't know what to do, like we're fighting an enemy that we don't know like what they're capable of,
and that ties a lot into like the ending when we have Rob and I can't recall her name at this moment.
Here, I got it.
Beth.
Beth.
When Rob and Beth are kind of the last two standing, or I guess crouching underneath a bridge, and Rob is trying to like kind of articulate to the camera like what's happening, and they both share this message, and I caught myself crying a lot in this movie because of like the deeper meaning behind it. Like it's more than just a monster movie. There's definitely like post 9/11 anxieties and like 21st century woes embedded into this script. And he says something like the U.S. military's over here, and this like thing is over here, and we're caught in the middle. And like that really kind of like that was a very interesting way of you know, it's like a metaphor for how a lot of people felt. How a lot of people have felt, like, in the last 23 years of, like, all of these things that are happening that are out of our control. But yet we're still being affected by it. Like, we're being impacted by these, like, forces that, like, we didn't start. We didn't start a war, you know, but, like, our lives are impacted by it. And, you know, she even says, like, I don't know why this is happening. Like, what did we do to deserve this, kind of thing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that ending for those two characters is a great dialogue for that point.
Yeah.
Even HUD says it, like, on the Brooklyn Bridge of, like, I think it's the other brother, not Rob.
That one that gets killed first.
Yeah, the one that gets killed, where he looks at HUD, or it might be Rob, either one of them. They look at HUD and they go, why are you still recording? And he's like, what? Like,
People are going to want to see this.
People need to see this. And he responds like they will, like, you know, it's on the news or whatever. He's like, no, like, people, like, someone needs to be documenting, like, what I'm documenting.
Yep.
And it, you know, like boots on the ground. And that was also, like, very interesting.
Yep.
Of, like, that perspective of, like, early, you know, at the time, late 2000s, you know, type of stuff of, like, everyone needs to document stuff.
Yeah, like, we have an obsession with documenting every single moment of our
talk about
existence.
throwback.
Yeah,
talk about throwback when Rob enters the room in the party and everyone's recording on their small flip phones. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It is funny because it's like that.
Their little tiny screens.
Yeah, that mentality of, like, documenting and everything has only become more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
Like, that's just
It's even
taken
more
for
relevant
granted
now.
at this point.
Yeah.
Like, if something's happening, you just expect that somebody has a video of it somewhere on a phone.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of like our obsession with it. I have more points about the 2008 nature of this film that I'm going to bring up.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, I mean, do you want to go?
No, you
want to
can
go next?
go, yeah.
Because if you want, well, because is it like 2008 culturally?
yeah.
Why don't you go next? Because I want to talk about editing.
Okay,
So-
cool.
Yeah.
I really wanted to make a point about Lily. Lily is a character that I did not pay attention to at all the first time I watched this movie. I did not pay attention to her at all. On this go around, I was paying extra attention to Lily, and I think she's a very important character. But I would like to just go on the record and say that I think Lily had the worst night
Yeah.
out of all the characters. For several reasons.
She was like Clerks. She wasn't supposed to be there.
She lost her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was the first one to go.
Yeah.
And they're not just like casually dating. Like, she at the beginning of the film makes a reference to, like, oh, we'll probably be married soon. Like, they're in a very serious. They very much love each other.
Yeah.
She loses him first thing. She loses Marlena, her friend. We know that Marlena is Lily's friend because at the beginning she's like, I'm only at this party because of Lily.
Yeah.
And to my 2008 culture, as a woman, I have to make this point. Lily has to walk around that fucking city all night wearing the worst heels imaginable. Like, those are the most 2008 shoes I have ever seen. And I remember wearing shoes like that, and I remember how terrible they are. And I can just only imagine how much pain she was in physically. All
Achilles
night.
tendon gone.
Like, she
Now-
was struggling. She was trying so hard not to, like, complain about it because, like, people are dying. But, like, she can't walk in those shoes. Are you kidding?
She wears them all the way up till when they climb the building.
She climbs up those stairs, and I finally saw her hold them.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank God, she's finally taken those damn shoes off.
I have in my notes from when I was watching this, I said, how the hell has this woman walked around New York in heels this whole time?
Literally. But then
I have a question.
But I have another point about Lily, which was...
Well, no, this is still, the question is still on this. Do you think, the heel conversation, do you think with those heels, she can outrun a T-Rex like in Jurassic World.
I mean,
Honestly,
maybe at
Lily.
the
I think she
beginning of
could
the
at this
night,
point.
but not at like 4 a.m. in the morning when they were finally getting. So my other point about Lily is, I do think she had the worst night, but like Lily's still alive.
Yeah. She's the only person.
Well,
Like the last time we see her is she gets on that chopper by herself.
Yeah.
And like
that's your mystery box.
Who knows? Like she might have gotten out of there. So, I'm thinking Lily did have the worst night. I mean, death is not the worst thing. She has to live. If she did survive, she has to live with that trauma of being the lone survivor of that whole of everybody that she loves. So
Yeah.
that friend group.
I really
yeah.
felt for Lily on this watch. I was like, that poor, and she just didn't complain one time. She was really kind of, she wanted to break down, but she was like, no, we got to do this. We got to go get Beth,
Yeah.
So I felt for her
Well, and
on
even
this watch.
Yeah, and like even through all that, like the scene where she has to where Rob's mom calls, and he has to tell her that
Oh my God.
his brother's dead.
That was such a
Like
sad
Lily
scene.
comes over there and is like comforting him, and now you don't get any dialogue, so it could be them. They're like comforting each other mutually, but it is like she's still the one that through all of this is still like taking the initiative to be like we need to take a moment and talk about this, while we can.
Yeah. That was a very tender moment with Rob talking to his mom. It was one of the moments that I cried.
Well, and then
that
with
moment's so good.
like the sort of 9/11 allegory, like I think it's very specific that it's worded when he specifically says, we were on the bridge when it hit. Mm-hmm. And it's like, obviously he's talking about the tail, but like that phrasing specifically is very, very much 9/11 allegory.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And not just like they're not just trying to, paint a picture of like what 9/11 felt like, but the impacts that it had afterwards, and like the impacts that it had on people afterwards.
Yeah, and it directly plays. It's just like it's a part of the cultural zeitgeist at this moment, and so it affects the media that's being made. It's the same thing with Japan and post World War II. It's like you see it in the media, even if it doesn't have anything to do with it directly. You see it because it's a trauma on the whole.
It's a great document. It's a great document to like point to like that moment in time. Yeah, it's a time capsule.
Yeah,
it's this movie and what I would argue Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Because that was like the first movie that really showed like when the aliens start attacking, and then Tom Cruise gets that like dust of like people and stuff, and it's like that moment when the aliens attack, like that is really Spielberg just doing what he felt about 9/11. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel like that
like the pandemonium
kind of opened up
and the chaos of like,
and I feel like that kind of opened
up
up the floodgates for Hollywood to be like, not just like, oh, it's okay for us to tackle 9/11, but just to be like, okay, like audiences are somewhat okay with seeing this on film now.
Well, and maybe not, maybe seeing an allegory for it and not like a direct like biopic of like what happened.
Yes, exactly, because it took a while for there to be a biopic. But yeah.
Absolutely.
But Freddie, you wanted to talk about the editing?
Yeah,
because I have a note about.
Did you have anything else
I have a note about that.
Okay.
No, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the editing, because I think that it's very much a example of found footage being pushed to the limit, but I think it's also indicative of how much further that style of editing could go, even outside of the found footage format. But I'll get to that in a second. But So I really appreciate the way that it's very specifically a mini DV cam footage. Like this is recorded to physical tape, and that's utilized as a storytelling element.
It is.
So
the going back and forth between what was on the original tape and then what's being recorded.
And what's being recorded over top of it. And it's funny because like I remember doing that as a kid, like with the home movie camera, like going back to look at something that is like, oh, I want to see this, and then I accidentally record over it, and then playing it back, I'm looking at this footage and I'm like really excited to see the clip, and then all of a sudden it's like just what the camera is pointed at the wall right now, and I'm like, oh god, no, I just erased it. I recorded right over top of it, and then it cuts back to the original footage.
And you see like Rob, like when he finds out that he's recording over the tape. He's recording over the tape, and he knows what's on the tape, and you just see that. It's telling for the audience, but you have to know that kind of media too. Like you have to know the significance of that media in order to understand the significance of that plot point.
It diegetically.
The cool thing too.
Well,
the cool fun fact that I have about the DV tape is that what I read is that the movie is 80 minutes, minus credits.
Yeah.
So like it's a total of 80 minutes, which is the longest you can record on a DV tape.
Oh my god.
That's what I was, I didn't look into it enough, but I was wondering that because I'm like, most of the DV tapes that I've ever used have been 60, but I'm like, there has to be some longer one that they have paid attention to.
That's
with
what
the
I read
length of this movie.
Okay, so with the length of the recording tape, does that account for battery life?
And that was the other thing. I'm like, there's no way this battery lasts this long.
There's no way that battery would have lasted as long as it lasted.
No.
He was using the flashlight and the infrared and the night vision, and I'm like, what? There's like battery life goals. Like that camera was on for straight 10 hours.
I wish.
Well, he wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it is edited, and there are times where he does turn it off and turn it back on because at the party, he's constantly going to get people's confessions, and then even at some points it's okay, now we're here, now we're there, because even when it cuts to Rob talking to his mom, it hard cuts to them later to something something else in the subway. So there has to be some moments where he turns it off, but I do agree that even if there were times where he turns it off, the camera off, it's still you are wasting a lot of battery.
Exactly. Exactly.
Especially for that time
of the film,
especially 2008.
By the end of the film, it's daylight. It is now morning.
Yeah.
That camera was on
an entire night. I think he says that does he say it's 8 hours? Because he says at the end of the movie how long it's been since they've been attacked. So, but I don't remember.
Well, the cool thing that I caught about the time that he says is the time that is at the beginning of the movie, when he's recording the day that they took to Coney Island.
Oh,
so it's 6:42 in the morning. That's the cool fun thing that I have.
Okay.
That I noticed. Because when he said it, he said it's 6:42 in the morning. There's this monster that's attacking, and I'm like, that sounds familiar. And so when the movie ended, I restarted the movie, and it cuts to him in the the hotel. And he's like, it's 6:42 in the morning, and I'm here with my beautiful girlfriend. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of poetic, actually.
Yeah. And so with sort of that backstory, let me So just to kind of tie back into this editing part of it.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting with the little ellipses that they do where they cut in between of this footage from earlier, and it it contextualizes moments like that moment at the party when he realizes that he's recording over this tape. They give that bit of information as to what he's recording over right then.
Yeah.
And so it diegetically justifies a really jarring editing style.
But it makes for great character development.
Yeah. And I do think that party backdrop to starting the movie out is a really effective way to introduce all these characters, show how they interact with each other, show how they're related to one another, all kind of like fluidly without it really feeling like that's what they're doing.
It's very natural.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is I think that, because ultimately, like, if you were to take that type of editing out of the context of it being a DV camera, I think there's something to that. And I think that that's almost like, I think that could almost be looked at as like a tragedy of like the found footage format in general, is that it's constantly tied to this, and at the same time, like, that style of editing kind of gets looked down upon because the found footage format has like a really kitschy reputation, so people don't take it overly seriously.
Yeah,
but I think
Cloverfield is the best to ever do the found footage, like, in my opinion, better than Blair Witch. Like,
I mean, yeah, but what I'm saying is, I think with that though, like, I would love to see like that same style of editing, like what we are getting in Cloverfield, with these quick bits of information being given to the audience, like just suddenly out of nowhere, like right when you need it, like what that would look like outside of the context of like, this is a video camera. Right. Like, if somebody was just willing to take that and go with it, because there was a period of time where found footage was like every third movie that came out, where it's like this is printing money, this format. And so that's where this connotation of it being like lesser, quote unquote, sort of developed. Like, I guess what I'm saying with like the tragedy is like, I wish that there would have been people that took that idea of editing like that fast paced and that frenetically, with, because it's very avant-garde in the way that it's just giving information to you, and it doesn't care like about how it doesn't care about the flow of the current scene. It's like, this is the information you need right now, boom, here it is. And they justify it in this movie, and it works really effectively. It's like serendipitous with what the story is.
Yeah.
But I think that there is like an element there, had people been willing to like take that risk and like push outside of the boundaries of just keeping that type of editing within found footage.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen REC Record?
Yes. I've seen the first one. Or no.
Okay.
I'm confusing it with VHS.
No,
REC is a film from Mexico. It got an American remake called Quarantine, but REC is the better one. With REC, it's
I think
basically
I saw Quarantine. That's the one with the rats, right?
I don't know. I remember probably seeing it in high school, but the one that I rewatch is REC, because REC is so good. But with with Record, it's about a news reporter, surprisingly, going to a firehouse and just documenting like a day in a firehouse, and then they get a call, and then now they're trapped in this house, and like scary, spooky stuff happens. And things from that. But with that, like, they use the camera in the way of like it's a news document. And so once when they get told that they can't leave this house because they're quarantined and all this stuff, they start documenting it in a way versus like, oh, this is like for the news, to like actually being like, we don't know if we're going to survive this, so we need like someone to record this. Right. And it almost has like the same editing style as Cloverfield. It doesn't have like a backing track like Freddie's saying of like giving you that information for the audience for like character development like that, but it's just in this vein of like it felt like it's pushing past the Blair, like what Blair Witch like ended up starting. Mm-hmm. But and then now I feel like adding to Freddie's point, like I do feel like after REC, and then you get, because I think REC came out in 2005, so then you get Cloverfield. Like I do think that Cloverfield might have peaked at the found footage, subgenre.
Yeah.
And that, like, it is just kind of sad that, like, what you're saying, Freddie, that, like, no one's ever thought to, like, maybe go back to, like, that kind of, like, style.
Yeah, and it's like you don't have to, I mean, if you want to do more found footage, you can, but I think there's an element there that I would love to see somebody explore and not just say like, oh, this style of editing is only exclusively able to be used in movies that are found footage movies. Just like,
yeah,
but I do think, I mean, Cloverfield is by far my favorite found footage movie.
Yeah.
Like, rewatching
the way that they
this,
do it is like, I just want to like bring it in with like what makes Cloverfield's found footage so unique is it's a horror film, right? And in a normal horror film that's not found footage, whenever something eerie or spooky or scary is about to happen, there's like a swelling of music, or there's like some sort of build up of tension. And I was taken aback in this rewatch. Like the first time, like I forgot how sudden it was. Like the first time that we have any inclination that something is wrong, they are in the middle of a conversation about like life is short, like go get the girl, and then the lights cut off, the earth shakes, and you just hear a bunch of screams. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, but like that's what life is. Like in life there's no build up of tension to kind of signify that something spooky is about to happen. Like it just happens. Yeah. And I think that's like a testament to this type of filmmaking that just it's really hard to replicate. It's really hard to replicate and make it seem authentic, but Cloverfield did it. Like makeLoverfield makes it seem it's not forced, it's very authentic, and that's what makes it a great like found footage film.
It is masterfully executed. Yeah. And like because it's found footage, like everything has to be diegetic. They can't give you non-diegetic music, or because then they're gonna break that suspension of disbelief. So it's like even at the party at the beginning when it cuts it, it's HUD recording. Shoot, I forgot her name. The girl that he has a crush on, Marlena. It's him recording Marlena.
Lizzie Kaplan is probably my favorite actor to come out of this movie. I freaking love her.
She has the funniest line in this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, she has a lot of funny lines.
Are you aware of Garfield?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like it cuts to her and it's playing Beautiful Girls by Sean Kingston. Girls by
Sean Kingston! Oh my god, yes!
I'm like, yes.
That's so 2008.
Dude, I was like, throw back. I was like, yo.
So 2008.
Bouncing off the music thing, I wrote that down as one of the points. I was like, yeah, like having no score works so well for the movie. It doesn't have a score until the end, the end credits. The end credits have an overture by Michael Giacchino, the GOAT. One of the best film composers, in my opinion. But yeah, like, it's just crazy that, like, I didn't even think about that it didn't have, like, you know, violins or just music in general until at the end, because I watched the whole credits and it said, overture by Michael Giacchino. I'm like, oh, wait, there is no music. There's no score. Like, damn. Yeah. And it's so good at, like, building suspense and tension, like the subway scene, or even, like, when they escape the subway scene and they're in the mall, or the department store, and the army swats them. Like, it's so crazy when Marlene, you know, breaks out and stuff. Like, I just love all the bits of tension that build throughout the movie.
Yeah. Right. And I do love with the way that they incorporate the news footage as well, where they run into that store and then it's like him recording the news footage, and you get like
different news channels too.
You're like looking at the news channels, you're getting like these sort of wider establishing shots. It's like an ingenious way.
It's believable. Like, they're in New York City. Like, he just walks across the street to this TV store, and they're showing the news. Like, of course.
Yeah. It works so perfectly to get the types of shots that they wanted to get in that news footage. It's like, just put it in that, and then we'll have them run in and get it. And we've gotten that on screen in a way that's natural to the story. Yeah. And then at the same time, like, you know that what they're filming on the news is like
just down the street,
2 blocks away from where they're at right now.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
And, like, what's
also interesting about that scene too is like, again, like, what I like is that it's different news channels and they're not showing the same thing. It's not like most modern blockbusters where a tragic event happens and all the TVs switch to the president conference. Like all the TVs switch to like one CNN or whatever. But what's also interesting too that I noticed is that one TV or two TVs are also playing SpongeBob.
Yeah, I was just about to say
playing
that.
SpongeBob? I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
Yes, they're playing SpongeBob, and what I thought was interesting about that is that it can tie into the 9/11 stuff of Nickelodeon isn't going to stop their broadcast, because it wasn't like 9/11 was happening, but at the same time, like it wasn't like World War III, if that makes sense. Where like things were starting to calm down, so like it didn't have to be like like most movies where it's like we interrupt this broadcast like the world is ending, type of thing. That it felt more real. That like you would just switch to the news channel to get the news versus like you're watching cartoons and it just switches to New York is under attack.
Yeah, the Cartoon Network and the Nickelodeon and the Disney, they were not going to stop their broadcasts for that. Yeah.
Also, I think I'm pretty sure the SpongeBob, the episode of SpongeBob that is
it's
playing,
the bodybuilding episode.
Isn't it a news anchor that's on the TV in that scene? It's like a news anchor SpongeBob scene.
Yes, because it's the one where he wants to, be like Larry.
Yeah.
And he gets the buff arms.
Like
it's the buff arm one. And so it's them it's them broadcasting like the competition.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a very cool Easter egg. I like that.
But yeah,
I mean that was. What were you gonna say?
I do have another thing going off of editing to go to cinematography. I wrote down HUD is the Roger Dinkins of cameramen.
Oh my god!
There are so many like snap zooms and like quick zooms that HUD has, and I understand like that is the director's intent, like you have to show the monster here, or things like that, but there's some like moments in the movie where I'm like, god damn HUD, like you're on it, man. Like if you survive this, you need to be like
he
a
figured
cinematographer.
out how to use that camera quickly for it not being his camera.
Yeah, he's like, I don't really want to do this, and then like by like 20 minutes into the movie, he's like, I gotta get all the footy, man. What are you talking about? Like,
Rob's the one that's
I did also
appreciate.
Yeah,
I did also appreciate when he dies, the camera auto focuses, like it
can't find
to
focus
like
anymore.
autofocus.
Yeah,
I loved that.
Yeah, and I love that touch because it shows that like. It shows that like no one's a camera man, you know what I mean? Like, because like I remember when we were film class, Freddie, and they're like never use autofocus.
Oh yeah,
like you should never use autofocus. That's and I was like, or even when our photography class, like they're like, yeah, you should auto focus your stuff. Like you do it versus like autofocus. And I was just like, it was such a cool touch of like, yeah, no, this is just a dude off the street, like he doesn't know how to work this camera, so like of course he uses autofocus. And I love that like subtle touch versus just it being, perfectly in focus the whole time.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would have been kind of a mess. It would have been out of focus a lot.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. I lost my train of thought.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. Other than that, I can talk about I watched this film on the 4K. Beautiful transfer, but my thing is like it feels a little bit taboo to watch this movie in bright crisp 4K, where I feel like I maybe should have bought. Maybe I need to go back and buy the DVD and watch it in 480p.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that because I knew you were watching the 4K version. Like how it feels watching it, because I specifically watched the DVD just to ask you like how different it feels.
And I watched it on Vudu, so I watched the digital version.
What did you watch, like an HD version as well?
I watched whatever Connor has.
She watched the 4K.
Oh, okay. Because I feel like I was 4K. Like, let me watch it on DVD because it's meant to be like it's meant to be like a early 2000s video camera. Like that's not going to be 4K, obviously, right?
I mean, I didn't feel like it was too.
It wasn't that bad.
Much.
There are
I felt like
a
it
lot.
Still had had the older camera vibe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a lot of shots that have the grain like in it. Like when you really zoom in, Freddy, like it has that like old grain to it. And there
Okay.
are some shots that like even like when it's just like a static like wide shot like with HUD and stuff, like it does feel like it. But there are like some like when they're like running in the city and stuff that feel like crisp, you know, like Dolby Vision like 4K. But like when you're in the movie, like when you let the movie take you, like you don't even think about it, type of thing. And to me, like because I love this movie so much, I would recommend like getting it in 4K because like the movie never looked better, in my opinion. Like this is how like the movie looks like how I felt like it probably looked when we watched it as a kid. Yeah. It was like, God damn, like this is insane. And to that point, like the CG and special effects are insane. Because I also watched the VFX breakdown on the Blu-ray, and dude, there are some shots in this movie that you wouldn't even realize are all CG. Or just like all like them on a green screen, that they're not even in New York. And it looks like them in New York. Yeah. Like this is a whole movie that isn't like this isn't like Blair Witch where they just sent actors to, you know, a forest and filmed, where they just sent these actors to New York. Like there's a lot of like sound stages and like, you know, green screen, like there was like one shot where it's like Rob, you know, trying to call his girlfriend like on the bridge before it collapsed. That was all green screen for him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm like, it's a really cool breakdown of like how they did it and how they, you know, created the monster and like all the physics sims and things. And I'm like, this is like insane of like how much like it still holds up that you don't even think about that. There are like some like in the subway, like you can kind of tell that they're CG, you know, little bug monsters. But other than that, like there's like a lot of like the movie that still holds up in my opinion, where I'm like, this looks great.
Yeah. And to the CG point, I just want to shout out the production design team for putting those two skyscrapers together.
Yeah.
The set of them walking onto the collapsed skyscraper from one of the top floors of the other skyscraper that it's leaning on.
Yeah.
Was so cool, and it looked so good.
A cool set piece.
And I really like when like practical things are used like that, and it really kind of like put you in the zone, if there's another way to say that. But like, yeah, it really like I think it was just masterfully done, and like the way that they had to like the way that when they were like walking through the hallways of the like of the
leaning,
twisted building, like it's leaning, and they're like kind of like leaning on the walls. That was very cool. So I mean, I just think there's a lot of effort and thought went into this entire movie, and you know, I think we all really enjoyed it. I think we should maybe reveal our ratings for Cloverfield. What are on Letterboxd? What does each of us rate Cloverfield? Starting with Freddie.
So my Letterboxd ratings are, I do the 1 through 5 star with the half stars.
Yeah.
But then I also give it a secondary rating. That's like a little bit more, like I can give it a star rating, but I kind of feel like in general, it's hard to quantify it to a number, so I kind of just give it a second rating based on if you should completely avoid it, if you should stream it for free if you get the chance, if you should rent, if it's worth spending a little bit of money to rent it, if it's worth spending more money to buy it, or if it's worth buying like the most expensive version of it you can get.
Yeah.
So I gave it 4 stars, which if you look at my Letterboxd, I don't know, I maybe have 2 movies that I've given under like 3. So I tend to give really high star ratings, but I did put it in the buy it category. I 100% think it's worth owning.
Yeah.
It's such like a great movie to just put on if it's like you see it and it's like one of those movies where like once you've seen it the first time, you can like put it on, and then if you're just like walking around doing stuff in your house, you can tune into it and you're like, okay, yeah, so like I know exactly where we're at in this story, and I'm like, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
It sucks you in so quickly just from like any point.
Yeah, I like that. So 4 stars.
Yep.
And you think it's worth buying. C-Bear, how do you do your Letterboxd ratings?
My Letterboxd ratings, I do the 10-point scale. So on Letterboxd, that includes like half stars. And
so
things.
like 10 is 5, and 9 is 4.5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I gave Cloverfield a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10.
Wow, perfect film.
10 out of 10.
Yes. With my films that I rate, I kind of base them more off of the rewatchability, how much I enjoy it, like will I go with it. There are like some other categories of like if a film is more like prestigious, let's just say, you know, something where it is like a actual like masterpiece, then like yeah, I could probably give it a 10 out of 10 for that. But then with this, like comparing, like saying like, oh, but you gave, you know, The Godfather a 10 out of 10 and then this a 10 out of 10, like I don't agree with that. It's like, well, that's because I think that this is a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
Because this is something where I can rewatch it all the time, and those are the ones that I give 10 out of 10s because of the fact of like I'm constantly like watching this movie, I'm constantly consuming it, versus just like I watched it once and yeah, it might have been, you know, an amazing movie, but you know, I probably won't touch it here and there. But yeah, I think this is an incredible film. I think it's highly rewatchable, and yeah, like every year or every so often I remember it and I'm like, gotta watch it.
Yeah.
Gotta watch this movie.
Yeah, especially during spooky season.
Yeah.
It was a really good
Oh, yeah.
pick for our first film discussion. So I am similar to both of you in a way, the way that I give out 5 stars, but also the way that I don't really give out a whole lot less than 3 stars. I kind of rate films a lot like how I would like grade like work, and basically like a 3-star, which equates to like a 6 out of 10, is like the worst you can do but still pass. And so if you get less than a 3 stars for me, like that's a failing grade, like you've failed. But I would say like my 4 stars are like, I really enjoyed this, or maybe I didn't enjoy it, but I can see the artistry behind it and I can see the effort put into it and I can give it props for that. I give out a lot of 4.5s, you know, like movies that I really enjoyed that I think were made really well, but maybe I just don't think are perfect. But my 5 stars are, I don't know, some people might think I throw out 5 stars a lot, but I think I give 5 stars rarely.
I give out 5 stars a lot. Don't worry.
I don't give out 5 stars that much. I think I'm very frugal with my 5 stars, but my 5 stars are
I'm
like
a simple man.
My 5 stars are like, either I think this is a perfect film, like I think everything about it is executed absolutely perfectly, or if it's not a perfect film, it is like something that I just adore and love, and it is made for me. Like I rate for myself. I don't rate for, you know, a publication or anything. So it's like my 5 stars are like, this is my favorite. This is one of my favorite movies ever.
I hear you. That's why I rate Pitch Perfect 5 stars.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think it's a lot more. I really enjoy film ratings that are based a lot on like individual personal preference than like when somebody's trying to just like objectively say, based on these 10 things, this falls under this criteria. I just don't think that's as interesting. Like I think getting what do you feel like as a person that's watched this, I think, because I think it makes for more interesting reviews.
Yeah, I have some interesting 5 stars, you know, like might not be considered like one of the best films ever, but it's something that really resonated with me personally. And so with Cloverfield, I would say Cloverfield for me is a easy 4.5 stars. It is a 9 out of 10. I think it is an amazing film. I think it is something I really loved about Cloverfield is how short it is.
Yeah.
Because it is
90-minute bangers.
You start it and it's just like you're in it and then it's over. And so I really love that about the film.
It doesn't overstay its welcome.
It doesn't overstay its welcome. I don't necessarily think it's perfect. But I think it's close to perfect.
Yeah.
So,
and I can agree with that too.
That's my 4.5 star Cloverfield rating. I loved it. I loved it on this rewatch for sure.
On the 10-point scale, we got a 10 out of 10, a 9.5, or a 9,
a 9 out of 10,
a 9, and
an 8 out of 10.
So,
so we're
all up there.
We're up there, and we are Cloverfield lovers, I would say. So great way to get us started with spooky October. Sea Bear, we really appreciate it. But that leads us into our second week of Spooktober, Spooky October. Next up is Freddie. Freddie's going to tell us what his pick is for next week for Spooky October. What's it going to be?
Alrighty. I will. So, for my Spooky October pick, I am going with 2019's Blood Quantum, directed by Jeff Barnaby. Rest in peace.
He died?
Yeah.
Sad.
It was kind of a shock, but yeah, unfortunately, he is no longer alive. However, he has multiple films, he has a legacy, and we have a way to remember him through these films.
And we are going to remember him through Blood Quantum. Tell us what Blood Quantum is about and why you picked it.
So let me just, how about, I'll start, I'll just read the Letterboxd little synopsis. So Letterboxd says, the dead are coming back to life outside of the isolated Mi'kmaq Reserve of Red Crow, except for its indigenous inhabitants who are strangely immune to the zombie plague. So it's a zombie movie.
Zombie.
And
zombie.
The premise is that the indigenous population are the only people that, for some reason, are not able to be infected by this zombie plague.
I have never seen this, and I'm so interested in this concept.
And I'm definitely very excited I'm really excited to talk about this movie. Yay. I've talked about it before. I have a lot of stuff to say about it because there is a ton of allegory. It's very similar to something like Get Out in the amount of like layers that are here. Awesome. It's got like colonialism. It's got missing and murdered indigenous women. There's a lot to unpack in this movie that I think, because it's an indigenous film and there's not a whole, it just doesn't get the love that it should. There's not a ton of conversation happening around movies like this, but it 100% deserves to have it.
Okay. I'm excited to get to talk about it next week too, because I don't think Connor and I have seen it at all, so we're excited about it. So next week, go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it, but yeah, for our audience, you can stream Blood Quantum on Shudder or AMC Plus, or you can rent it on Vudu, iTunes, and YouTube. You can also buy them on Vudu, YouTube, and iTunes. And right now, as of this recording, it seems like it's on sale on Vudu for $6.99. So it's probably cheaper to buy it than rent it.
I'm excited about this.
So if you want to spend no money, get that Shudder free trial. If you want to spend a little money, get that rental, buy it. For me, it's extra. Not to give away my rating, but obviously I want to talk about this movie because I love it. But yeah,
all right,
I have the Blu-ray, so
okay. All right, well, I just wanted to give us some shout out. We do have an Instagram page called Triple Feature Pod, so follow us on Instagram for updates on our episodes and any other updates we'll have on there. But also, you should follow the three of us on Letterboxd. My Letterboxd is just Emma Hodge, EMMA HODGE is my Letterboxd. And Freddie's, yours is?
Mine is Freddie Dakota. The technical username is F Dakota, but I think if you search either one, I should come up.
And Seabear?
And mine is Big Papa Seabear, BIGPAPACBEAR.
Big Papa Seabear.
Big Papa Seabear.
All right.
Search him up.
All right. So yeah, follow us on Letterboxd. You can keep up with our reviews. That is the end of our show today. Thank you for listening. If you've made it this far into the episode, you're a real one.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. But we will see you next week when we talk about Blood Quantum. So if you want to be a part of that conversation, watch it. All right.
Please go watch it.
That's your homework. All right. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.